Welcome to Fantasy Football Hub. Today I'm joined by FPL expert FPL Heisenberg to preview the upcoming game week. Wes, some breaking news before we get into your team is that Reece James has picked up yet another injury. As a Chelsea fan, that makes me sad, but let's talk FPL here. What do we do? What is going on?
Yeah, it's such a shame. Like you say, it is breaking news for us at the time of recording. It's literally just happened. So we are reacting live to it. Yeah, it is a real shame. He was a consideration for a transfer in this week for my team, obviously no longer. And I guess it highlights the need to, I don't want to patronize people because I sometimes do make early transfers myself. Over the years, I've made plenty. But I think when it comes to a player like Reece James, especially when there was talks of him being subbed in the Liverpool game with maybe he was just tired or maybe it was like an uncomfortable feeling or whatever. When you know it is an injury risk player, I think it is always wise to wait. And I don't even think he's gone up in price yet either. So yeah, for certain players, I wouldn't have made an early transfer and Reece James was one of them. But yeah, I was potentially looking at gambling on both him and Chilwell, having a double up for Chelsea's next. West Ham away isn't great for a clean sheet, for example, but after that, and even including West Ham, to be fair, it was a very good run, isn't it?
You could say the same about Chilwell, to be fair. Historically has been injury prone. It is one of those that team value is important, but so is having players in your team that aren't injured. It's a tough one. These sort of players just are prone to it. Yeah, it was an interesting one because watching it as a Chelsea fan and knowing Reece James pretty well in his record, when he came off, he didn't look completely comfortable. People saying he jogged off and had a smile on his face. I personally didn't see that. I'm not trying to say that I saw this injury coming or anything like that. But my immediate reaction was, he was holding his leg. He didn't look in great comfort. Now, who knows? He may well have picked up this injury in training this week. But yeah, that is the thing with these sort of fullbacks. They're very aggressive in their play style. And we know with James in particular, he can get injured pretty easily. The question now, Wes, is for James owners, what do you do? Where do you go?
Yeah, I think obviously if you've got James, some people have got the double up, but I guess most with James haven't got Chilwell. So that would be a fairly easy sideways move. However, Chilwell has gone up by that 0.1. Maybe you've kept some back in the bank, before the season started and you'll be fine to do that. And that looks an obvious one because obviously, like I just said, Chelsea's fixture is great. Chilwell against Liverpool, so attacking Chilwell in pre-season was, flying left winger essentially. Obviously scored that goal against Liverpool, didn't he? That was just offside. Had another great chance, bad touch let him down, and obviously grabbed the assist. And even got pushed over for like it would have been a bit soft to be fair, but could have been a penalty, which would have been an assist. Just goes to show he's getting into the box so often from open play as well. Not just sort of one of those defenders who only has assist threat if he's like on corners or something. It's open play threat. So yeah, great asset. So yeah, I think Reece James to Chilwell makes a lot of sense. Chelsea, I want to get your opinion actually as a Chelsea fan on, is it Gusto? The right back,
Malo Gusto.
backup for?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think?
I mean, he's great. Honestly, for the first time in a while, this is a proper backup right back that Chelsea fans are happy to see playing in the team. Had a really good preseason. Wasn't great to be fair when he came on the other day, but first Premier League game, that's probably to be expected against a good team.
Yeah.
The only question is whether getting him in now is just a bit too risky. First of all, because of expected minutes going down the line. We don't know how serious this James injury is. If it's just a little hamstring, I don't know, tweak, then he may well be back in 2 weeks. Who knows? And then the risk with that is that you have a Chelsea slot locked in. I tweeted the other day, I feel like getting on 3 Chelsea players and making sure they are the right 3 for this unbelievable fixture run, if we continue to look great, is going to be so important because it's so hard to flip-flop around from players. As we saw with Brighton last year, for example, you got to get on those 3 and pretty much stick with them. And that's hard to do. So if you lock yourself in with Gusto, despite the fact that, he might do well in maybe 1 or 2 games, I personally won't go there as I think it's a bit too risky. But if you're a James owner and you see Gusto right there for 4 million looking at you, easy swap in the same position, same team, that has to be tempting. So I don't know.
I agree with all that. I think if Reece James gets ruled out for maybe these next glorious 6 game weeks for Chelsea, then it makes sense.
Yeah.
So it would have to be a longer term injury to Reece James. And I don't mind if I've got a couple of 4.0 defenders that I'm not thrilled with, especially. I could obviously do that move myself, like jump from a 4 million defender to what would be a better one. But like you say, it does take up a Chelsea slot if Reece's injury isn't too bad. And it uses a valuable transfer. Do I want to do, Baldock or Kabore to Gusto just for a couple of weeks and then Reece James be back in? So it definitely depends on the length of injury for Reece James. And yeah, you take up that Chelsea slot if you do want the likes of Jackson, Reece James and Chilwell down the line, then you could be a bit snookered. So I don't want to put people off him entirely, but there's just some things to consider if you are going to go there. Consider all of that, what we just said. If you still want to go there, you can, but just know there are some dangerous risks to that move.
Yeah, food for thought nonetheless there. It is a tempting one. I hold my hands up. But definitely with that one, wait until the deadline, because who knows, we may get some more news over the next couple of days, or even right up to the deadline about the severity of James's injury, or just we can kind of work out as a community whether Gusto is a good pick.
Yeah, for sure.
Right then, mate. Let's go on to your team. Not bad. Gameweek 1, run me through it. 76 points, pretty solid start overall.
Yeah, happy enough with the start. 76 points, a couple of disappointing things, but mainly fairly happy. The Man United boys, I won't dwell on them too much, played fairly poorly for me, Rashford and Bruno. Bruno could have got a fantasy return from, I think it was a corner, Varane headed wide, maybe another assist as well. So some promising signs there from Bruno at least. And we do know he's on penalties, and if he scores, he's normally good for bonus, stuff like that. So happier with Bruno. Rashford looked a bit off it for me, but he was getting some chances. So if the confidence comes, that'll be okay. I'm going to hold them both for a couple of games. Tottenham away. Tottenham obviously a very attacking team now under Postecoglou, and can concede goals. So that isn't necessarily a tough fixture for the attackers. And Forest at home, I want to see what happens. And I'm definitely reluctant to sort of look at one game, a poor game against Wolves. Okay, fair enough. I'm reluctant to look at that and just be like, oh, I'm swapping them out for someone who scored well in week 1, because they're both proven solid FPL assets who have got a good couple of fixtures to come good in. If they don't in those first 3 game weeks, then fine. I'll ship one on.
Okay, mate. So here is your team for next week, and it looks pretty strong once again. A 96% game week rating. One player that we need to talk about is Gabriel. There's been a lot of discussion in the community about early team news, leaks, rumors, that sort of stuff. I don't know what you were doing at 6:25 on Friday, but do you want to be shackled to your phone and news, every deadline, looking out for this sort of stuff? Tell me what happened with you for your team.
Yeah, I was in Greece actually, and I was beavering away. I was working anyway, and I was on my phone. I saw the news at like 6:27, I want to say.
Oof.
But I wasn't sure, because it came from Andy. I did trust it instinctively almost straight away, but it was almost like, it wasn't enough time to act. And I wasn't 100% sure on it. And it ended up being correct. It would have been okay if Saliba didn't get that lucky assist, because it was literally just a 2-yard pass to Saka, and Saka banged it in from about 25 yards or whatever it was. So frustrating that obviously Saliba got the points. It would have potentially been the move. But looking at the sort of Gabriel, do I regret that decision? Absolutely not. He played like 73 games in a row in the Premier League. His attacking threat compared to Saliba last season was far greater. Saliba even missed some games for injuries, which sort of indicated that Gabriel was maybe more sturdy, or whatever the word is, less injury prone or whatever. But his attacking threat, I looked at sort of shots per game last season for Gabriel versus Saliba. Gabriel was way up. Obviously, with that injury news, if it came maybe just half an hour earlier, would have probably acted on it. But with just a few minutes to go to the deadline, and I think the FPL site crashed at maybe 6:28, 6:29. So I was happy just to leave it and hope he played. He didn't. Arsenal conceded. Saliba 4 points. Gabriel 1. It's not the end of the world. My theory on Gabriel that I've tweeted, if anyone wants to go find it, is basically that because it was such an easy home fixture against Forest, that Arteta, because what he did is he played the same 11 from the Community Shield, didn't he? Apart from Gabriel came out and Nketiah, a striker, came in, which allowed sort of Partey to be a right back who inverted into midfield and blah, blah, blah. However, I don't think he'll do that away at Palace, because Palace are a better team than Forest, generally speaking. I think we'd all say that. Mid-table team, solid. To go away from home and be that attacking again after it didn't necessarily work out that well against Forest from how they played, I personally think he'll revert to a more typical formation and Gabriel will come back in. That's just my theory. Could be completely wrong. Who knows? So my thought was to hold him for that, based on I think he will play against Crystal Palace. Long term, I'm not happy to own him though, because if one of the main reasons I got him was for him being an ultra nailed asset, played all 38 games last season. But now if he's not that sort of player, then I don't want to have this question marks every week. But so I was either thinking save a transfer or move him on to Reece James. That
well, this is what I was going to ask you this. I was, obviously James hasn't gone up in price yet, so you weren't pushed by a price change.
Yeah.
If he was looking close, would you have been tempted? I know you mentioned earlier about not going for price riser just because you want to get on a player, or especially when a player is injury prone. But given that you have 1 million in the bank, was that not tempting?
No, I do have 1 million in the bank, which would have allowed me to absorb price changes anyway. If
Yeah.
I'd have had just zero point 0.5 and I was going to be priced out, I still don't think I would because it's Reece James. If it was a player like, a Watkins I was bringing in, or if it was a Watkins who's like, I can see him in front of me. This wires in my head. He's not an injury prone type player. If I really wanted him, I'd be happy to move early for him. It's much less of a risk. But yeah, for Reece James, I just wouldn't have done it. Especially as he came off early against Liverpool, just couldn't do it. But yeah, I think now with there not being a standout replacement for Gabriel this week, and we don't know what's going on with Reece James, I probably will hold. I'm not tempted by the sideways switch to Saliba just because, like I said, I prefer Gabriel's goal threat. And I'm not convinced that Gabriel could go back to being a nailed asset, and game week 1 just might be a blip, which could be a good
Yeah,
thing
he
if that
could,
happens.
100% could. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, as you say, he played so many games in a row. It would
yeah,
be strange if he's just dropped out of the team now just because he wants to change it up permanently. I
yeah,
don't personally see that. As you say, I think it was a tactic for that one specific game, and he's mentioned he wants to do
yeah.
that now, like vary it up game per game.
Yeah, I'm hoping he plays Crystal Palace. Then it's Fulham at home. I hope he gets that one. And then the fixtures get a little bit tougher with Man United at home, Everton away, Tottenham at home. So at that point, especially if a defender really emerges as a really strong asset, maybe it ends up being, I don't know, Luke Shaw for before Forest at home in week 3, or I don't know, a really solid 4.5 option might emerge or something. I don't know what will happen.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm hoping to give him the Crystal Palace and Fulham game. I really like in the first game of the season, if possible, to save a transfer, give me 2 frees in game week 3, and something happens and I need to restructure price wise or formation wise, I can do that with 2 frees. Just doing Gabriel to say a Saliba doesn't really achieve anything. It uses up a transfer. And if Gabriel starts next game anyway, I'm probably not going to benefit from going Gabriel to Saliba this week. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Gabriel, mate.
yeah, sure thing. Now let's talk about the rest of your team. It looks pretty
Yep.
strong, as I said. Martinelli kind of underwhelmed a little bit, as did the entire Arsenal attack, but I don't see why you'd sell him right now. And Burma did really well for those 7 points. Looks like maybe the best 6.5 million pick.
Yeah.
The question is, I guess, in your team, do you start Turner or Pickford?
Yes, I'm going to start Turner. So what I'm going to do with Pickford and Turner, early on, a couple of weeks before the season started, Pickford was going to be my keeper. Then the Turner story emerged. Checked that rotation, and it works pretty perfectly. When Pickford does have a tough fixture like this week, Villa away. So I think it's game weeks 2, 5, and 9. I'll use Turner. Yeah, so their rotation sees them play in the next 8 game weeks. Sheffield United at home twice. Sorry, no, Sheffield United twice, not at home twice. But Luton at home twice. Burnley at home. So 5 out of the 8 fixtures are against newly promoted teams. And they've also got Bournemouth at home and Wolves at home. The only tough fixture I see in the next 8, if you look at the rotation of Pickford and Turner, is Brentford away in game week 6, which would be for Pickford. Other than that, it's pretty much playing against either newly promoted sides or teams who are probably going to be the bottom 6, the likes of Wolves and Bournemouth. And there's a lot of home fixtures in there as well. 6 out of the 8 would be at home. So yeah, really strong rotation. And it's not based on me thinking, well, it's a few things. With Everton and Pickford, it's more the sort of the Sean Dyche factor, and it's the fixtures factor when you couple in the rotation. I think it's going to be, it's more about the teams they play against, which is why I think clean sheets could be on the cards for those two. Could go wrong. I could end up benching Pickford when he gets a big return against a difficult side or something, but I'm going to play it on paper, and I'm going to play the easier fixtures for the two, and it just makes sense for those first 9 game weeks.
That's the thing. With rotating goalies, we know that it can always go wrong, but when you have a 4 million gift in a Turner, I think with a fixture like this one as well, it would be a little bit silly not to play him. I mean, I'm playing him ahead of Onana. Yeah, Tottenham away is a tough game, but still, you're thinking about Everton keeper versus a United defence that kept the most clean sheets last year, or at least De Gea got the Golden Glove last year. You might think it's silly, but for me, you got to play the fixtures.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work out, then, you play percentages in this game, don't you?
Yeah, exactly that. And I'm not going to be even annoyed about, because I've already got it set out now. From now until game week 9, I know which goalkeeper I'm playing. If Pickford or Turner gets a haul when I'm not playing them, that would have never been the fixture I designed for them to play in. So I'm not going to be annoyed at, Pickford got a penalty save away at Man City and got some crazy big haul. I was never going to play it. You're never going to pick a keeper away at Man City if Turner's got an easy fixture or whatever it might be. So yeah, that's how I'm playing it. I've got it set up for the first 9 weeks. Whatever they get, and I'm happy with that. Obviously, if I ended up wildcarding earlier, I'd possibly look at Sanchez from Chelsea. A 4.5 million Chelsea keeper could be good. However, I feel like he is a good option for 4.5, but I don't think he's necessarily an amazing option. With Chelsea, maybe are we that convinced on their defensive capabilities just yet? Definitely convinced going forward under Pochettino, but yeah, I don't think Sanchez. I won't be bringing in Sanchez and using up a free transfer. But like I said, if I do end up wildcarding before game week 9, I can scrap this plan and maybe just get Sanchez as a set and forget. But as for now, I'm really happy with this setup. Pickford was relatively unlucky not to get a clean sheet in the first week with the first shot on target Fulham had, I think, was like 70th minute or something when they scored. So on another day, maybe that's a 1-0 Everton win instead because they had a lot of chances themselves and it's a Pickford clean sheet and maybe a bonus point or two, something like that. So happy enough with Pickford as an option, happy enough with Turner, especially as Forest are pretty decent at home when I'll be playing him. So yeah, happy with my keepers.
No, as you said, looks really strong, and it does make sense at least in my head and from what you're saying to roll the transfer this week if you're happy with Gabriel. However, you are the first guest that we've had on this series that has Gabriel, so therefore I'm really interested to see what Fantasy Football Hub's AI recommended transfers think about your team and whether they, for the first time, are actually recommending to make that transfer of Gabriel out. Now, as we mentioned, the James news changes things, and it has literally just happened. So it may not have caught up with that yet, but nonetheless, let's have a look at your AI recommended transfers, Wes. Okay, Wes. So recommended option according to the AI is to save transfer for game week 2. We both kind of agree, and looking at your team, it does make the most sense. Alternative option is to sell Gabriel for James. Now, obviously, you're not going to do that because of the news that we've literally just got. And guys, it does take a little bit of time sometimes. I mean, that news literally happened just before we started recording for the AI to catch up. But one of the great things about this website and the tool is that you can click on don't recommend a player. Say, for example, that an injury literally just has happened, or you just don't fancy this player in general. Click don't recommend, click recommend new transfer, and it just brings up a new player for you, a new set of recommendations. So here we go. Kabore is out and Colwill comes in. I think the point with this is that Colwill's predicted points now are higher than Gabriel's. So Colwill would just come straight into the team. Maybe not necessarily for game week 2, but say Gabriel wasn't to start and didn't get any minutes, you'd have that really solid first bench option. And then from game week 3, when the fixtures look brilliant, he would just come in instead of Gabriel. What do you think there? You got the money in the bank. You could do this move. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a really clever suggestion from the algorithm, and it is, funnily enough, with the algorithm, I was actually thinking before, I checked it myself actually a couple of hours ago, but I was actually thinking save a transfer or Gabriel to Reece James. I got into the algorithm, it says exactly the same thing. And then I hadn't actually thought of that one, Kabore to Colwill, but it does make a lot of sense because it does strengthen the bench. And it does mean that you can play, if Gabriel does become a concern, he can then be relegated to the bench and at least be a better option than Kabore. And then Colwill can play in that amazing fixture run. Like you said, maybe not this week away at West Ham, but then from game week 3 onwards, Colwill at 4.5 million is just a solid route into some, maybe not as much, obviously not as much attacking threat as Reece James could have provided us, but it offers you a cheap route into that Chelsea defence for that amazing fixture run. So yeah, it makes sense as an alternative recommendation to the save a transfer route, which I'm probably looking at doing.
Yeah, I think just if you were to look at your team, you'd say where are the weaknesses in where could they be potentially? And if Gabriel doesn't play, then you're looking at Bulldog coming on. I think he's had an injury concern as well, so I'm not sure his place is absolutely nailed. So then you're looking at Kabore coming in. Obviously, this is kind of worst case scenario, but yeah, if you did want that security, and also if James being out, maybe that unlocks another Chelsea spot for us, a good Chelsea player down the line, perhaps in Colwill. That could be a nice route. Now, I don't think you're going to do it, but the recommended option is still to save, but it gives you something to think about, right?
Yeah, and it is clever because I've got like 1 million in the bank, but a threadbare bench.
Yeah.
That's probably the risk I created in pre-season with this threadbare bench. I knew what I was doing with that. I wanted the money focused into my 11 and I wanted that million spare so that I could, use that if needed. If Mboma got injured week 1 and Maddison went crazy, then that could have been a move or something like that straight away without using free transfer and without wasting that money on my bench. So that's the tactic I went for. But I do like, when I see teams who do have one solid bench option, I do like that as well. Hopefully if Bulldog's fit, then Forest away isn't the worst first sub in the world. Who knows? It's not the best. Obviously, we know Sheffield United aren't great, but I'm not too displeased with that. But yeah, strengthening my bench will potentially be something I'll look at soon, and upgrading one of those 4.0 defenders to a solid 4.5 option makes a lot of sense because it still leaves me with 4.5 in the bank as well.
That looks strong, to be fair. Looks strong. Kind of a well-rounded move going forward. But yeah, there you go, Wes. That is your AI recommended transfer. Guys, if you would like your own AI recommended transfer. Perhaps you have Gabriel as well, or the likes of John Stones, who we're hearing now is injured and out of Game Week 2. And click the link down below. Sign up to Fantasy Football Hub and get your own recommended transfers. You don't have to use them, by the way, but as Wes has said, it gives you something to think about, another option, and it's sensible as well. You see here, recommended option is still to save transfer for Game Week 2, which I think the majority of us would agree is the best thing to do, looking at Wes's team with the James news. Okay, mate, that is going to do it for this one. Thank you very much. As always, best of luck in the next game week. Now, I am very excited to see what happens with your team if, I mean, it sounds a bit bad, if Gabriel, for whatever reason, doesn't play, and then we can judge what would the points difference have been had you gone for Colwill in for Kabore, for example. You know, say worst case scenario that the Gabriel doesn't play, Baldock doesn't play, you've saved that transfer. What would have happened? Because I think that's quite a fun thing to do. You look at the AI recommended transfers and you don't go for them necessarily, but you think next game week, oh, could I have been in a better spot if I had just gone for it? I don't know. It's a fun one anyway. But Wes, thank you very much, mate. Good luck next game week, and all of you watching as well. These red arrows on the screen need to become green. I've gone for red arrows. What do you think about that before we end the video? I've put red arrows by our ranks because we all start equally at 1, in my opinion. What do you think?
Okay, yeah. I suppose it is a red arrow then.
A bit negative perhaps.
Yeah, but I just felt it as a grey arrow, I suppose. But yeah, at least if we start on red, then the only way is up with the
I started number 1, mate.
I
started number 1, and it's a big red arrow for me, Game Week 1. That's all I'll say. Yeah. Next week, couple of greens. Guys, thank you as always, and I will see you next week with some more content.